Hi there, Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 257 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my best to answer them. So if you have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comment section of this video. And as I said, hopefully your question will be featured next week. If you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you are new, and usually I would talk about a figure that corresponds with the number of the episode. In this case, it would have been VC 57, and I've already talked at length about VC 57 because that would be Dr. Evazan, and in fact I reviewed the reissue of that figure last week or the week before. So we're going to skip that this week and we're going to get straight on to this week's questions. Matty I says, hey boss, do you think they'll ever release an updated Revenge of the Sith Anakin and Obi-Wan? I've seen the updated Anakin in that Evolution 3 pack, but do you think we'll get one without the Sith eyes and his blue lightsaber? I'm not too sure about the configuration of what they'll do with that figure, but I'm almost certain that we will see a version of the Revenge of the Sith Anakin outside of that 3-pack. I think Yakface even has him on his rumoured list on his website, so that kind of goes hand in hand with that. But you know what happens with those 3-packs. It's often the case that you end up getting those figures single carded, or at least most of them. We've already had the Clone Wars Anakin, albeit a version of him on the Ahsoka card without the cape. So I'm glad that they've made him slightly different for that 3-pack. And of course, if they're going to be doing Revenge of the Sith Anakin, you would think and hope that Obi-Wan wouldn't be too far behind, considering that the figure that we have for Obi-Wan, some of that figure I think even dates back to 2005, which is a pretty poor show. So we are in desperate need of Obi-Wan. I think he did all right in March Madness, so there is demand. And at the end of the day, if you're getting into the top 64 of March Madness or any other figure poll for that matter, then you know you're going to be doing pretty well. So I would suggest that Obi-Wan won't be too far behind Anakin Skywalker. Whether that be this year or next year is another matter. I'm pretty sure we'll get the Anakin this year for sure. John TK1140 says, hey BB, question for next week. Do you think it's time for the Interceptor to be re-released at this time with an updated pilot, maybe on a Return of the Jedi card back? I mean, I've got no qualms about that happening. I think the TIE Interceptor is a great vehicle. Whether it's time, like the right time for it to be done, is another matter. I feel that they should have maybe released it a year or so ago when it was featured quite heavily in, what was it, The Mandalorian? Weren't they chasing Bo-Katan in one of the episodes? That would have been a good time to get the TIE Interceptor out again, in my opinion. And there isn't really too much wrong with the version that we have, the Legacy Collection / Vintage Collection version. I think there's just different colour schemes between the two, except for the fact that they obviously have that wing issue that all TIE fighters have in, you know, the Hasbro lines, where they sort of end up being a bit droopy and they can sort of fall off and stuff like that. So not the best. But I think the TIE Interceptor may have been seen in the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer. It may be the TIE Interceptor, or it might be the TIE Avenger, because I think the back wings look a little bit different to a TIE Interceptor. But you'll have to let me know in the comment section below about that, whether we've seen the Avenger or maybe we've seen both of them. I haven't really inspected the trailer, you know, that closely. But if that's the case, if it is in the Mandalorian Grogu, then obviously that's a good time to reissue it. Freya's Film says, hello, do you think there's a chance of Hasbro releasing an updated version of the Max Rebo band? Thanks. I mean, there's always a chance in everything, isn't there? But that is, to me, quite a slim chance, in my opinion. I think, you know, 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi is now in the rear view mirror, although that doesn't mean we won't get anything from Return of the Jedi. But I think that just the costs involved to get a Max Rebo band out, you know, might be quite high. There'd be a lot more than just your standard deluxe figure, in my opinion, you know, the whole band, of course. And of course, they didn't release anything like that when they gave us the play sets and the barge and things like that. They just missed those completely. So it would seem a bit odd, in my opinion, for Hasbro just to suddenly go, we're doing the Max Rebo band at this point in time. 1976 Zuckus says, hi BB, great job as usual. Thanks for all your work. Question for next week. I love all the contests such as Last Figure Standing, March Madness, but we don't have any contests for vehicles and playsets in TVC. Do you think this could be a good idea to organise a contest, October Madness, for vehicles and playsets? Beasts could be added also. You very often talk about these topics in your videos: Ewok Village, Vader's TIE Fighter, Bantha, A-Wing, the Marauder, Dubak, Mustafar playset, Death Star playset, all the speeders, Hoth playset. Organising such a contest could also give some clues to Hasbro for the next HasLab Your thoughts, good or bad idea? Thanks in advance for your answer. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is definitely something that me and my buddies have talked about, John Miko and Chris from Banter Skull that run Last Figure Standing. And, you know, we always talk about vehicles and play sets and creatures, and it wouldn't be cool to do like a poll for one of those. And apart from the fact that it obviously takes a lot of time out of people's lives to put these things on for the community, there are other issues surrounding vehicles, and it comes down to sort of, you know, what people actually want from that vehicle. So a great example is the Republic Gunship, right? Somebody that's new to collecting might not have a Republic Gunship that's been released over the years, and for them that would be absolutely fine. Maybe $120 Republic Gunship, I'm very happy with that, with a pilot or whatever, thank you very much. Whereas another person might say, well, no, I want a Republic Gunship that's better scaled, has all the bells and whistles, and would have to be a HasLab, and therefore might be closer to, I don't know, $300. And you could go right the way across every vehicle in, you know, Star Wars, as well as creatures and playsets and things like that. Another great example is the Death Star playset. You know, would you want a massive all-in-one Death Star, or would you be happy for sort of smaller play sets where they all join together over a couple of years and you end up with your Death Star, like a modular type thing? So it's quite difficult to sort of pinpoint exactly what people want and what they mean when they say they want something. And that's kind of the hurdles that we've talked about getting over. You know, it'd be quite easy to just say, right, what vehicles do you want, and give that to Hasbro. But I don't really think that might be enough information for Hasbro to really act on in any meaningful way, if that makes sense. Matt H1476 says, great video, BB. Question for next week. It seems like for the carded multi-packs, they straight repack one figure, then it's a clever tooling reuse with one mostly new figure. Do you think this could be a great opportunity for a Cantina Patrons pack to appease the original 96 collectors with a repack of Hammerhead, new head and legs Ponda Barber, perhaps Ali or Shoosh with or without a fourth figure? I mean, you know, on the face of it, it seems like a great idea. They're sort of righting the wrongs of the past, if you like. But to be honest, I think with Ponda Barber, I mean, we've had, what, 3 or 4 opportunities to buy this figure now. And they've kind of said to the carded collectors, look, it's on a new alternative card back. Isn't that great? And they're probably thinking, yeah, okay. But then if you look at the retro collection version, it is actually on that original 96 card. So who are we appeasing here? Are we appeasing the loose collectors with the larger head and the better legs? Or are we appeasing the carded collectors? Because for me, Hammerhead would seem like we're appeasing the carded collectors. And I truly do believe that Hasbro kind of realised that they've messed up with that Hammerhead now, and it's really going to be interesting to see what they do with that. It's going to be too late. It's coming out on that larger card back. It is a bit of a kick in the teeth for the people that have collected, you know, on card original 96 figures. It really is. It may seem like a small issue for some people, but for those particular people that collect, they are feeling like it's, you know, as I said, like a bit of a kick in the teeth. So personally, I think for those two, I think it would be wrong to reissue them so soon again in like a 4-pack. It's like you've just had the opportunity to buy this one on a larger deluxe card back, and now, yes, okay, here it is on the smaller card back, but you have to buy 2 or 3 other figures to be able to get it. I don't think it's going to work, man. I really don't. Stephen Vasic says, hi, BB. Great work as usual. My question for next week is, what character would you like a figure of in TVC from the other 3.75-inch Star Wars lines that isn't already in TVC? I would love a Space Trooper or Gungan Leader in TVC. What would you want? Keep up the good work and hope you and yours are all well. Man, this is a really difficult question to say like 1 or 2 characters, because essentially there are so many that I would like and need for them to, you know, update super articulated figures of in the vintage collection. You know, I could go through Garandan, the Ugnaughts. I've put these 2 Solo characters there. There's Rio from Solo as well. There's countless Rogue One figures that we know about that have done well in March Madness, like Baze Malbus, Saw Gerrera, 2 Tubes. There's literally, I don't know, I could probably say 50 figures right now off the top of my head that are in other 3.75-inch lines that I would like in the vintage collection. And this is kind of half the problem, really. Gary Moore says, question for next week, why do you think there is a reluctance from Hasbro to give us more Andor figures? The success of The Mandalorian provided us with a high volume of TVC figures, probably more than any other media, and yet with Andor it's just been lackluster. Do you think this will change during or after season 2? I certainly hope so, but I think what needs to happen is that the viewing figures go up for season 2 when you compare them to season 1. I know there's many people out there, including yourself, Gary, including myself, that absolutely love season 1 of, Andor. Fantastic series. People call it critically acclaimed, all that kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is it just didn't get watched as much as, especially The Mandalorian, which essentially went into, the wider media, pop culture. The whole Baby Yoda thing obviously helped with that, and more eyes were on The Mandalorian, and you can kind of understand why they sort of cashed in on it. I also do agree with the fact that, the characters in The Mandalorian do lend themselves better to toys. If you think of like The Mandalorian himself, Grogu, Paz Vizsla, things like that, versus Luthen, Andor in another outfit, Bix, things like that. It is a bit of a shame, but it is kind of a fact as well. But, if it was up to me, we would definitely get more Andor figures. And let's just hope that Andor Season 2 really does hit home. Everybody loves it. Everyone's talking about it. And then maybe in the future we'll get some more figures from the show. Carl Wilson says, hi BB, great weekend viewing as always. Question for next week. When I look at the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka figures released, including multiple card backs of the same characters, I really can't understand why Hasbro have ignored Carson Teva. He has appeared in all these shows and really deserves a release, possibly with his own X-Wing. I know we already have X-Wings, but a Mandalorian branded one with Carson would go well with the Razor Crest and the Ghost. The actor Paul Sun-Hyung Lee is a collector also with his own channel. Carson would be a great addition to the line. Pelimoto is another one, and Frog Lady with Frog Spawn eating Grogu would be great. Thanks, BB. So I have a inkling that we won't actually have to wait too much longer for a Carson Teva figure. Maybe even this week. I've been looking at what Steve Evans has been doing on his Instagram, and he even had like a post on there where Carson Teva's image was sort of, behind some sort of interference type graphics, if you like. And I've got a feeling we might even see him this week, but we'll have to wait and see what happens on Tuesday. Ian Mason says, hey Bossk, long time collector here, and I'm losing steam. The line just isn't exciting anymore, and I feel like I'm being priced out. What do you say to those of us to encourage us to keep going? Well, buddy, unfortunately, if you feel like you are losing steam and sort of maybe falling out of love with the hobby, there might not be too much I can say to change that. Everyone has their sort of personal preferences. What I would say is that the overall quality of the vintage collection has been improving, and the figures that we got last year especially, some of those figures were exceptional. And there's a lot to sort of look forward to, in my opinion. It does really depend on what you're after from the line. I mean, for example, I'm looking forward to the Cantina. I'm looking forward to seeing what the new Han Solo looks like. I really like the new Luke Skywalker. I'm looking forward to the new Ben Kenobi and all the other things that sort of go with that. I'm looking forward to the Anakin Skywalker 3-pack. I'm looking forward to the Heir to the Empire figures. So there is actually quite a lot of things that I'm looking forward to. And I actually think that 2025 is a huge improvement on last year. And last year we still got some really, really good figures. So that's kind of all I can say. If there's nothing sort of like in the pipeline or anything that's been revealed that really takes your fancy, then there's not really a lot I can say that's going to change that. Maybe just wait to see what else gets revealed. And if anything takes your fancy, then pick it up. Sakic Score says, hi Tim, here's my question for next week. I've been watching the March Madness last figure standing results, and with the upcoming 10th anniversary of Rogue One and also the 5th anniversary of the Bad Batch Season 1, it makes sense for me that the theme for next year, 2026 TVC, should be about completing the team. I mean, you could complete and go about every Star Wars project. You could add some bad guys we're missing from Solo, like Dryden Voss or Asajj Ventress from Clone Wars, and maybe some Jedi to go with Anakin and Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith, which I hope would be revealed for this year's 20th anniversary. Yeah, I know I might be dreaming hard, but what's your opinion on that matter? Thanks for your time and passion you give into this hobby. So anybody that's watched my channel over the last 2-3 years, they would know that, completing the team is something that I talk about a lot. I'm just getting fed up of Hasbro releasing one figure from a team. The classic one is Hunter, right? So we get Hunter from the Bad Batch. The Black Series get the whole team twice, and we're still waiting for any more characters from that team. And that is an actual team of characters. It's not like, oh, here's 5 characters from the same scene. Hunter, the figure that we have in TVC, is just left on his own to do nothing. He looks out of place with everything, and you need the other figures to go with him. Kind of the same thing with Rogue One. If you've got Chirrut Emwe, then you do need Baze Malbus. It's almost like, what's the point of having one and not the other? And this is something that I've talked about many times with Hasbro employees at conventions and things like that. They've got to stop doing that. They've got to stop giving us Hunter and then making us wait 3 years for any of the other characters from that Clone Force 99. So if there's a new Disney show or whatever that's got a team of characters, then you've got to just get them all out at the same time somehow in like a 4-pack or whatever it takes to do it, because it just kills the vibe, man. It really does. Would Hasbro create a theme similar to Return to Tatooine for completing themes? That's something that I think would be pretty cool, but let's face it, they would have a lot of teams to complete, wouldn't they? As I mentioned, we've got the Rogue One, we've got figures from Solo, we've got the Clone Force 99 figures. There's plenty of others out there that we still need in the line, where we're missing like 1 or 2 characters from, the Bounty Hunters. That's why I've got him there. Forlom, for example, where is Zuckuss? Where's the Bossk? Where's IG-88 in the Vintage Collection? I know we've had them previously, but they're lacking from the Vintage Collection. That Forlom figure itself is very, very old. So there's so many like crews and teams and, groups of characters that they still need to complete. I'm not too sure whether they could actually do like a theme for it personally, but you never know with Hasbro. But, when Steve Evans has always talked about these themes, he does sort of say, this year we took you to Tatooine and next year we're going to take you somewhere else. And that kind of leads me to believe that it'll be like another planet or era. So if it is an era, maybe, Return to Tatooine is the original trilogy. Maybe next year is the prequel trilogy. So that kind of thing. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do going forward. But as I've said, completing teams of figures is always something that I've gone on about. And I just wish they'd sort it out, to be honest. Kelsey Watson says, hi, question for next week. Do you think they will make a Vintage Collection Imperial Praetorian Guard figure? Now, I presume you mean the one from the Mandalorian Season 3. And if that's the case, I've got no doubt that they will make that figure, along with the Moff Gideon in his like Beskar armor. Pretty sure we'll get both of those. Both of those are also on Jason Yakface's rumor list, so that sort of backs that up as well. But what I would say is that if they are going to do it, it needs to be infinitely better than this figure here, because this Praetorian Guard is a pretty poor figure. His head doesn't move very well, his hips are poor, his feet are tiny. There's a lot wrong with that figure and it needs improving. So hopefully if they are going to be doing the one from the Mandalorian, it's completely different to that one. Toribio Mendiola says, hi BB, great episode as always. Question for next week. With the recent rumour that we'll have Crosshair this year, do you think it's possible that we'll have Wrecker this year? Going by what I was saying about, completing teams and the lack of these figures, I highly doubt that we will get Wrecker this year. If Crosshair is this year, then that is great. That's another one ticked off, isn't it? But I think we'll be made to wait for Wrecker, and without a doubt, he'll be a deluxe figure as well. Reno AZ says, great video BB, question for next week. Do you keep a carded copy of every figure? I started doing this in my collection and can't bring myself to stop. Thanks for all you do. So essentially, whenever I do buy a figure, yes, I do buy 2, because obviously I'm always going to be opening 1 for a review. Some characters out there, I might not want a loose version of it, but I still will open it for a review. And then I always want to keep a carded version. So yes, I do buy 2 of each. However, what I would say is that some of my older ones from TVC 1.0, I have been slowly moving on, and that's purely down to a space issue. I do not have space to display over 350 carded figures. So I just have to pick and choose. And I got fed up of them being in sort of boxes or whatever. So I thought I'd let other people enjoy them. And then, hopefully I've got a loose version of that figure in my collection. But that's kind of how I do things now. I always buy 2 going forward, but previous ones that I look on, I think, do I really need that figure carded anymore? And perhaps I'll move it on. Jesse G. Presley says, question for next week, how much do you worry about the future of TVC? In all honesty, I don't really worry about it too much. I think I was really worried about it back in 2020. It was in a very poor place back in 2020, and they have improved things since then. Of course, at any given time, they could just decide to cancel the line, even if they do have future plans going 18 months into the future, because we've seen it happen before with like the Legacy Collection, for example. We saw things that were actually revealed for the Legacy Collection that never came out, like the Phase 1 Captain Rex, for example. So I just feel it's not really something to like worry about too much. I feel that, some of the pipeline things and some of the future plans look pretty decent to me. This year is going to be infinitely better than last year. That is a definite. I'm pretty sure about that, you know, with some of the things that we've already pre-ordered. And I just think when you look at the popularity of the Snowtrooper, for example, and I'm pretty sure that they are going to be happy with the sales figures of that Snowtrooper, then that's going to be an indication that there's still a future in it. So I'm not too worried, but you know, as I said, anything can happen at any given time. Jesse Perez says, greetings from Texas, Bossk. Do you think if we were given a Haslab Republic gunship, it would come with the full set of the ball turrets, the 2 gunner that are in them, and a whole new mold of 2 Phase 1 clone pilots? So I would suggest if they were to do the gunship as a HasLab, then yes, it would come with all the bells and whistles. It has to if it's a HasLab. It has to be so much better than the version that we've got in the regular line. And so yeah, I'm sure it would come with all of the turrets, figures, pilots, all that kind of stuff. Jagalo Jedi says, howdy Bossk, long time viewer, first time poster. Thank you for everything you do, especially the reviews. It's helped me tremendously decide on purchases and has helped save me a lot of money and regrets. With that, I have a question, trying to understand how deluxe figures are decided. We are made to believe by Hasbro that the cost is the same between Black Series and Vintage, and the size and content of plastic isn't a factor. Yet, if the figure is slightly bigger than the average size character, it's automatically deluxe. And if you have too many accessories, it's deluxe. Or if you have too many paint applications, you're deluxe. Pretty soon, if you're not made like Morgan Elsbeth, you're going to be considered deluxe. I'm surprised Ponda Barber isn't deluxe, really surprised. Actually, are we sure he isn't deluxe? Thanks again for all your time and effort, and here's to another 250 episodes. Yeah, Ponda Barber is definitely not deluxe, that I can tell you, but I understand what you're saying here, and it does kind of seem like, you know, ordinary figures, or what we would perceive as ordinary figures, and I'm not talking about your Paz Vizslas here, which are, you know, blatantly sort of like bigger, chunkier figures, that they end up being deluxe, right? Jango Fett is the perfect example. There's no reason why that figure should have been deluxe. I've said that so many times now. They put a few more accessories in with him to make him deluxe, when really, they could have sold that figure. You know, he would have, in my opinion, he would have sold really well, just on a card back, possibly even more. I mean, over here, you can get that Jango Fett now for £8.95, the deluxe one, on Star Action Figures, which is just crazy. It means that they've got loads of them, and they're struggling to get rid of them, essentially. Whereas I think if you put him on a card back with a new cool image, it would have sold better. I really do believe it would. So I think what we can safely say is that we're potentially moving towards a price increase for your standard figures. Not the same as Black Series. I really can't see that happening. You know, people just won't agree to that. But I can kind of see a price increase happening in the near future. Because you say, you know, just ordinary figures are now being classed as deluxe anyway. So there needs to be kind of a happy medium going on here. But honestly, I don't really know what the answer is. The Hammerhead one was a killer, wasn't it? It really was. Steve DeBursa says, hi B, great video as always. Question for next week. Do you think that the fan feedback on the deluxe cards could lead to a rethink on future reveals before year end, or potentially a repacked edition of certain figures to align with the standard card sizings? It does seem like the potential sales of figures like Momo Nadon could be so much greater in a standard pack. I do find it odd how Hasbro appeared aware of the likely reaction to the deluxe pack, but continued with the plan. All the best, Steve. So yeah, this is kind of similar to a couple of the other questions that I've had, most notably the previous question, but also one earlier about repacking Hammerhead in like a 4-pack or whatever. You know, when I talk about Hammerhead, it's just one of them, isn't it? They must have known. I really don't know why they went through with it. Maybe they had to. That's the only reason I can think of. They had to do it like that, you know, from like a retailer's point of view, you know, distinguishing between a standard release and a deluxe release. But I think the average person, if you ask them now, would have said, stick Hammerhead on an ordinary card back. You're telling me he's deluxe. You're telling me he's this much. I don't agree with it, but I'm still going to buy him. And more people would have bought him because he would have been on that standard card back, where in actual fact, what you've done is alienate, you know, a section of the community because they were hoping to complete the original 96 on this sized card back, essentially. And yeah, I really do think they're probably rethinking things. Maybe not for ones that they've already released, but definitely how they treat these deluxe figures in the future. And in fact, Steve Evans has definitely said so on his posts and replies to people. You know, they need to rethink this basically, because, you know, it might work for like that Mandalorian Trooper. It might work for Cobb Vanth. but you can't put Hammerhead, an original 96, on that card back. And they're seeing the errors of their ways, unfortunately, with that one. Neil's Tutorials. Hi BB, great video again. Question for next week. Do you think the chance that the next HasLab will be the U-Wing, since we will get to see it in Andor Season 2? Also, next year is the Rogue One anniversary, so it would make sense. Well, once you put it like that, it would make sense, wouldn't it? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's going to be. Me personally, if I was going to choose what the next HasLab would be, I personally would go with the U-Wing. I think I've done a list of the things that I would like, and it comes down to a sandcrawler or an Imperial shuttle or the U-Wing. I love Rogue One, I love Andor, I love the design of the U-Wing, and I think that would be a really cool one for them to do. Remains to be seen whether that is what they will go with. I'm pretty sure we can all agree that there will be another HasLab, this year to back, and that will arrive next year. It does line up with Rogue One 10th anniversary, as you mentioned, so fingers crossed that's what it is. But equally, it could be the Marauder, couldn't it? Because of people want the Bad Batch, and that's a way of sort of getting all of that crew out quicker. So who knows, man? We'll have to wait and see. But if it was me, I would personally choose a U-Wing. All right then, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Please hit the like button if you did happen to enjoy it, and also leave your questions in the comment section for next week's episode to keep this series going. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members as always. And a big thank you to Tim Hayes, who is my latest Patreon supporter, signed up this week. Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.